Lewis, also known as SLK, is a top 100 global player globally in Rocket League, a college esport athlete at Illinois University, where he studies aerospace engineering. And he just came off a massive tournament where 20,000 people were watching him over Twitch. Thanks for joining us today, Lewis. How you going?
Good. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
No problem. So you just came off a big tournament. How'd it go?
It was all right. We played in front of a lot of people, and that was, my first time, playing on such a big stream. We played some tough teams, and I think overall we played well. We ended up losing, but we lost to one of the best collegiate teams in the country, and I think that, we got third place, so that was pretty good.
Yeah, awesome. And it's interesting with the COVID situation. You had to do this all online, right?
Yeah, it was all online. Normally it would have been a LAN, but with everything going on, you can't really have those things in person. So it was all online. But yeah.
Yeah. Do you still get the nerves, I guess, with knowing that it's going to be such a highly watched competition, or is it
Oh
different
yeah.
to? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the biggest thing that affected us wasn't, when once we played against really good teams, it wasn't really that we couldn't compete against them on the same level. It was really just
Mm.
came down to nerves, right? Because really good teams have, a lot of tournament experience, and that ends up, um, paying off, right? And once we play against them, because we were way more nervous than they were, since they've played like in
Yeah.
big tournaments like that so many times. So even if it was online, just knowing that you've got 25, 50,000 people watching you play, it's just, that's always in your back of your head when you play, and it plays a really big role.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm just going to start off with for people that might not quite understand what an esports college athlete is. They might have an understanding what an athlete is at
Mhm.
college. Can you explain or kind of summarize what a college athlete for esports is?
Yeah. I think it really doesn't. Um, it's not really that much different from an athlete. Don't I mean? Obviously, there's some key things like you're not really. You're focused on games on your computer, and there's key differences like that. There is also any sort of sport, right? You compare basketball to football. They're very different, but at the core, they're kind of the same. It's all about the competition. It's about being the best and winning. So I think that an esports athlete in the collegiate level is pretty much as the same as an athlete, right? If anything, now the world is adapting to this whole esports scene. It's fairly new and it's growing very fast and exponentially. So a lot of collegiates are still adapting. I know, for example, U of I, the school I go to, they're still adapting now, and they're starting to roll out scholarships and participate in bigger tournaments as well, and have more of that hands-on approach with their athletes. So I think in the coming years, it's getting really big, and an esports athlete is going to be no different than an athlete.
Yeah, awesome. Why do you think you were able to get into Illinois as a esport player? Like how good do you have to be to get into college at that level?
um it really depends on the school. When I went to Illinois, if I'm being completely honest, it was mostly just because of studies. I never really chose Illinois specifically because of the esports program, but once I got into Illinois, and I knew they had a Rocket League team for a while before I joined. It wasn't the main reason I chose to be there, but I knew it was a thing. And once I joined, I instantly looked at the Rocket League team because I really wanted to play there. And I think it slowly over time became a really big part of my life. And you start to realize, with all the collegiate tournaments, with all the other schools, you start to realize that esports is getting really big. um U of I right now, they're a solid school. They still have a lot of things to improve on, but over the last few years, they've really stepped up the esports program, and I'm sure a lot of other schools have too. Um, so yeah, when I went to U of I, wasn't mainly esports focused, but I think it became such a big part of my life now. Right, I'm so involved with it, and like the tournament I played a few days ago, it's just a really good feeling to represent your school. So yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
I
And
have a quick question. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it, Luke.
I just have a quick question because I think for me, like when I went to engineering school in France, and we don't have the same concept as in the US where sports is can be embedded in the school, and I'm really curious, like like what does your day look like as a esport player in a like and studying? Like how do you manage your studying time and your esport time during the day and also
Yeah,
like during the week?
yeah, it's hard. I'm not gonna lie, it's hard, right? Trying to, I'm pretty sure like any other athlete, collegiate athlete, it's hard maintaining both studies and good grades and social life and playing also your sport. It's hard. You just have to be very organized and have a routine and make sure you're ahead of everything. So the worst thing possible is for you to forget that you have a tournament coming up and you have a midterm on the same day, and now it's too late to rearrange anything, so you have to choose either I fail this midterm or I just I skip the tournament. And I've had to learn that you know through the hard way. It still happens once in a while. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not perfect. And sometimes you gotta prioritize certain things, but overall, I think you just gotta be on top of stuff and be very organized. Make sure you write everything down on the calendar as soon as you know about it, so you don't forget later. I think that's probably my biggest tip, at least from personal experience. But yeah, I think it's definitely a possibility. It's definitely possible. But you just gotta be really, really dedicated to it.
So just to confirm, you've skipped midterms for matches?
I have not, no, because my
Okay.
parents would kill me, but
I was gonna
it's
say
like
college.
either my parents kill me or my teammates kill me. I gotta
Yeah,
choose.
yeah,
But
yeah. I was gonna say, US colleges fees are a little bit different to Australian university fees, so you're
Mhm.
sacrificing a little bit more there. Um, so I wanted to talk to you about is you recently became top 100 globally in Rocket League, which is crazy achievement. I mean, if you would say that about other sports, that is insane. Um, Tell us a little bit what's that journey been like to get to that level?
Oh man, it's been crazy. I've been playing Rocket League for about 5 years now, and there was a predecessor to Rocket League called SARP, just for short, because the name is super long. But we used to call it SARP, and I was playing that since I was 8 or something on the PS3. I remember I downloaded the free demo and just got hooked, and that's how I knew Rocket League. Right, I didn't find it out through Twitch or through anything like that. It's just I played the predecessor to it, and then as soon as Rocket League came out, I wanted to play it. So I've been playing for a long time now, and to finally make it to the top and knowing that the top 0.0001% of players, it's just really gratifying, right? It feels like there's nothing better than knowing that your hard work is really paying off, and all your dedication you put into it, and all the blood and sweat and tears is it's really paying off, and there's a quantitative like result, right? You can see that you're in the top right now, and there's still so much more to come. Of course, I still want to compete at the highest levels, but it's just really, really gratifying.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Do things change as a player when you get to that level? Do you get? I mean, it might be further up the ranking still to come, but do people start kind of reaching out to you, going, "Hey, you know, can you join us? Can you be part of this organization?" And then you got these kind of like temptations, I guess, coming your
Yeah.
way.
um I mean, it does change up a lot. I feel like the attention gets a lot more focused on you, and with that becomes a lot of pressure, and you have a lot of responsibilities in that too. So once I got top 100, I remember a lot of people started messaging me on Discord for either coaching or you know uh, just playing on their teams and things like that, right? So there's a lot more attention to it, and you got to be a lot more responsible with it. In terms of the game, also changes up a lot because now you're competing with people that are at your level or beyond, and
Yeah.
they're crazy good. So you gotta adapt to that, and you gotta be ready to have those really drawn out matches where everybody's competing at the same level, and the tiniest of mistakes might cost you the game. So I think that's the biggest change
Yeah. Cool.
between the level that you play at the start of the game and then at the highest level levels.
Excellent. And just coming back to the collegiate scene, you talked about your schedule being something that's really quite difficult to manage with the amount of workload you have. What other challenges do you find in the collegiate scene, even just from a competing point of view? You talked about it being quite difficult at the top and top 100. What's the I guess the difficulty level for you at the moment with your team in Illinois?
If I think I have, there's two things that it's our biggest difficulty right now. I think the first one is our consistency. So a big part of Rocket League is being consistent. You might be really good at one day, but if the next day you just suck, that's not the best. People are really looking at teammates, and I think us as a school we're not as consistent. I know I am not, and I'm not going to speak for my teammates, but I know I can improve a lot on that area. And I think the second is we have a very diverse skill level on our teams. So we have, for example, me, the top 100, and I was teaming up with a couple of buddies that weren't even close to that, right? So it's really confusing sometimes when you're playing, against top 100 players every time you queue a match, and then moving down, and then you have to play against people who are not at the same level, they don't have the same knowledge of the game, and you have to kind of adapt to that. It's not like I'm gonna say, oh, my teammates are really bad. It's not that at all. It's just they play really good, but at their skill level right now, where they're at right now. And the biggest difficulty for me is just having to adapt to that, right? Because you go from playing with top 100 players, and then you play with other people, and that's like a whole new scenario you have to adapt to, and a lot of times you can't expect the same things from your teammates. And that's just a realistic thing, right? You're gonna see that at the highest levels too, because there are gonna be better players than others, and you have to adapt to that and just be realistic, right? If I set up this pass for my teammate, which is gonna be really hard to score, should I even set that pass up in the first place, right? If I feel like they can't score. So it's just, I feel like our biggest difficulties is just being consistent, and adapting to each other's skill level, since there's such a wide margin of
No, it's a very, very good point. I mean, I can relate to that from a tennis point of view, which is quite interesting, just from representing different school teams, and you'd have guys far better than you, or reverse, where you would be far better than someone else, and you'd win your match. It's a little bit different to Rocket League in a sense, because you're playing as a team, whereas we'd represent the whole team but individually. So you could go out, smash someone 6 love, and then your teammates all lose 6 love, and you're like, so I definitely can relate to that. What's the lifestyle of a collegiate player like? I mean, we've heard about your difficulty managing the schoolwork, the load, but what's your weekly schedule actually look like from a training point of view?
Generally, I try to sneak in at least 4 hours or so of game per day, which is, for some people it's a lot. For some people, they only play on the weekends, and that's fine. Like I said, I really want to be more consistent. So I think that to being consistent, you really need to play the game a lot. I've talked to a lot of professional players that play at the the highest level, the $1 million tournaments, and they've all told me that if you really want to be at the top, you got to be dedicated enough to it to put 60 to 80 hours every 2 weeks or so. So it's a grind, right? It's a grind, and at that point, if you're a professional player, it makes sense for you to play that much. But for example, if you're a collegiate student, you kind of need to balance it out, right? You can't just abandon your studies and just decide to play. For me personally, I try to sneak in 4 hours, every day or so. But sometimes midterms happen, or you have a big project coming up, or even social life. You need somebody's birthday coming up, or other things like that. You kind of need to lower your game time. So let's say midterm tomorrow. Today I probably won't play as much. I'll probably play only for an hour, and then study for the other 3 I would play.
Yeah.
So it's about adapting, really. You know, it's really hard to just have a constant schedule where, oh, I'm going to play 4 hours every single day. Sometimes you have to adapt, right? That's your goal, but you need to sometimes play more, play less, depending on what's coming up.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
And
just a quick question around what you just said. Like you said, you're practicing around 4 hours every day. Like at what point of your, I would say, career in esport you started to practice like in a consistent manner, and also what did you see changing when you started practicing like 4 hours a day? Did you see any changes, or really did nothing change?
Yeah, no, I think there was definitely a change. I really started, you know, I if I had to choose, I play 4 hours every single day because I love the game, but a lot of the time I couldn't do that because I had to focus on other things. I think once UI started really supporting the esports program, I remember they flew us out to New York for a tournament a year ago. So, and I think that really sent a message to me, like, wow, okay, now you know they really care about this sort of stuff, and they're really sticking their heads out there for us. So I think that it's, you know, it's my duty really to be at the top of my performance, just like any college athlete. So um, once they did that for us, right? They paid for all the tickets to New York, and you know, the hotels and everything. I was like, okay, I think the school deserves to have, you know, the best athletes possible. So I started really practicing more, you know, 4 hours a day, and I think after that you just clearly see an improvement, right? Because you just 8 hours a week, okay, and playing 4 hours a day is such a big difference that it's just, you instantly notice it, right? After 1 2 weeks, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm playing so much better than I did,
yeah,
you know, a while back. So yeah, it's really hard to maintain and try to, you know, play so much and study and everything at the same time. But once you do it, you just notice instant improvements.
yeah, and I'm quite interested. I mean, a big conversation we have with this journey of understanding esports and how we can kind of bring a coaching style to esports that is on par with, you know, sports that have been around for a long time, is obviously parents understanding of, okay, we got a computer game here, and we hear you play 4 hours a day, but then talking to you and knowing you a little bit now, you're intelligent, you're very healthy looking. You know, how do you maintain that other side of your life? You talked about lifestyle and social life. How do you balance it out? I know you used to be quite into sports as well. Do you still playing sport? Do you still fit that exercise into your life?
Oh yeah, I think it's very important, because like I said, any college sport, you need to have, you know, everything in check. You need to have a good, you know, mental health and a good, you know, body health, physical health. And the same goes for esports. A lot of people say, oh, you're not really, you know, running or doing this while you're playing a game, but it really doesn't matter, because I think that you having a healthy mindset and, you know, a healthy body too, it just helps so much when you're playing. Like I said, with the nerves before, you know, you having a calm mindset and, you know, getting rid of any sort of problems or deadlines or anything like that that's coming up. And you just go into the game calm and don't think about anything else, because that's such a big shift. Um, and it's very important. It's very, very important. I can't iterate it enough.
Yeah. And what kind of training do you do personally?
Um, I I used to play volleyball a lot, you know, to keep myself healthy. Nowadays with quarantine, I've kind of gotten a little bit lazy. I'm not gonna lie, but you know, just even going for a walk, um, you know, or a jog or anything like that for like 30 minutes, it's really good for you, and it really just helps a lot. Even mentally, right? You're doing physical exercise by jogging, but just going out and, you know, with the fresh air and everything like that, it really just helps a lot mentally. um I personally, like, exercise wise, that's generally what I do. Mentally, I don't do a lot, really. I don't, you know, I know that a lot of people do yoga or meditation and things like that, and I'm sure it helps, Me, I just I just like to lay on the couch and watch Netflix or something like that because that helps me relax, right? That's what
Yeah.
helps me the most relax. But there's definitely other things you can do that can help you out equally, if not more.
Yeah, interesting. Really interesting. What are some of the perks of being a collegiate athlete? What are some of the good things that people don't know about?
hmm Um, I think that the coolest thing really is that you just get to play video games basically for school, which is awesome, right?
Yeah.
If you really love a sport, for example, let's say you love football and you play football for your school, I'm pretty sure it's the same, right? I've
Yeah.
never actually played a regular sport, like a physical one for school. Of all I've done is esports, and that's the feeling I get from it. But I feel like any other athlete would too. It's just very rewarding to represent something that's bigger than you, right? Represent your organization and all the support they give it to you back, right? So to rent out a computer lab to have a personal training session with my teammates and think things through. We just contact the school and they'll instantly help you out with that. Or for example, when we went to New York, I didn't have to pay a single dime for airplane tickets, for the hotel, for food, for anything like that. The school is right there supporting you. And a lot of times that depends on the school, but at least for U of I, they're incredibly supportive, and that's probably one of the most rewarding things, really, as a collegiate esports player.
Hmm. Yeah, cool. What about the opposite? What are the downsides?
um, I I think that probably the biggest downside is really the pressure, right? Because a lot of people are expecting you to play well and expect you to play, at your top level, and you got to be realistic. Sometimes that's not going to happen. Everybody has bad days. So I think that the biggest downside really is just not performing as well as you wanted to, and or um, also with midterms and things like that, you having to manage. Sometimes you get burnt out. Sometimes you get stressed out, and I think it's important to say too, it's okay to take a break from the game. It's okay if you're burnt out from with school and with the game and everything. It's completely fine to just take a quick break from the game, and uh, just get your mind right first before you do anything
Hmm.
else. I think with other sports, for example, sometimes you don't have that luxury, right? You can go to your coach and say, "Hey, I'm not really feeling the game," but it's probably going to be some repercussions to that. Your coach might get mad at you or something like that. With esports, I've found that it's incredibly, just at least for my team, it's incredibly relaxed, and nobody will get mad at you if you say, "Hey, I need a break." They'll understand that completely because they're also going through the same things, right?
Hmm.
So I think really the biggest downside really is just the stress and the stress of representing the school and trying to always perform to your best, and that you just want to represent them the best that you can. So I think that's the biggest one. And sometimes you also get burnt out, right? It happens,
Yeah.
but I feel like that's with anything really.
Yeah, it's interesting. Burnout seems to be quite a common situation with the highest level of esports. And correct me if I'm wrong. It seems to be the fact that you're using your mind as your main muscle, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
someone in a previous conversation with me kind of said to me, it's a game of chess. Just at the same time, you need to have incredible hand-eye coordination.
Mm-hmm.
So I can imagine the brain is under a fair bit of pressure
Oh, yeah.
going through those processes.
Rocket League is exactly that. It's a game of chess that's way more complicated and with way more variables than chess. It's because, like you said, your mind is your main muscle you're going to use. So um, that's really why a lot of people get burnt out, right? Because using your mind 24/7 when you're playing is really complicated, and um, that sometimes when you don't play the best, it's literally because of your mindset or what you're feeling and things like that, right? Where in
Mm.
other sports, you might get injured, for example, and then you're like, oh well, I play bad because I'm still injured and things like that. In esports, it's not really like that. It's mostly because, well, I guess you can get a wrist injury, right, or something like that. But it's really mostly 90% just your mental game, and that's why it's very important that you reinforce that.
Yeah.
So you were talking about your mental game, right? And I have one question around that. I wonder, like, within your team, how much, because you talked about playing for 4 hours a day, but how much of the time spending with your teammate is actually not playing, but solving problems or planning strategies, and maybe training some of those team strategies?
We generally spend quite a few hours per week or so, just going over replays of us playing and fixing our mistakes and being like, hey guys, I feel like like you guys are going for the ball too much. Maybe we could try spacing out a little bit more and things like that. It's really that's where I think the biggest part of the teamwork comes in, because you need to work together as a team, right? You can't win the Rocket League. You can't 1v3 people. You can't win it by yourself. That's impossible. So you need to work as a team, and it's very important that you have that teamwork aspect, right? Where you're going over you guys playing, and you always got to be honest with your teammate. You got to be transparent. Then be like, hey, I feel this way when I play. Can you guys try doing that? And you also have to be, if you're on the other side, you have to be open-minded and think like, okay, well, let's try this out. What he feels this way, so let's try it out and see how it goes. So a lot of it is really just us as a team analyzing how we play and trying to, fix that and change things up. So it's really big. Coaching between us, between our team is really big.
Yeah, interesting.
Just to follow up on like just on this one, like I'm curious because for me, I mean, I played Counter-Strike not at a very high level, but I had this transition where in a moment where we were playing, like just for training the skills and all that, and then switching to the part where you play as a team. And I had this transition, and for me, it was like an eye opener. I was like, okay, this is what I enjoy a lot more than just going and being like a zombie playing the game. So I was wondering for you, what was your experience when you had that transition? Like, did you have that kind of similar experience where you transited from, okay, I'm playing a game to I'm competing with a team in a game and having that team kind of mentality and those strategy planning meetings? What was your experience with that?
It was big. It was really big. I think that I never really had a team per se, as I have with U of I. I've always, teamed up with friends of mine to play some tournaments here and there, but we're never like a concrete team, right? Where we practice every single week and things like that. Whereas in collegiate esports, for example, playing with my team now, it's a concrete thing. We're a team, right? And we do everything as a team. We need to practice as a team. We need to set up scrims as a team. Everything really is based off of teamwork. And that's where a lot of people say, for example, the chemistry comes in, right? How how close you are to your teammates and how much you respect them and things like that. So it was really an eye opener for me, like you said, Luke, that just stepping into a team and playing with them is a completely different experience than you just playing with a few friends for fun and going in a few tournaments.
How do you build that chemistry? How is that chemistry created?
Over time, specifically, thankfully, with all my teammates, they're really, really good people and they're really cool and they're very open-minded, very charismatic too. So it was very easy for us to bond, as once I joined the esports team, 1 month in already, we were pretty much all best friends. So it's really a matter of time. It always helps, right? If you have just naturally good chemistry with the people, it will happen where sometimes you have a teammate or two where you don't really see eye to eye. But it's always important to, when you're playing or when you're watching a replay of you guys playing or coaching or anything like that, it's important to just put those differences aside and think that you guys are, you guys are a unit. You guys play together. You guys, need to win together. There's no such thing as, you guys against each other. It's everybody against the other team. So sometimes there'll be small rivalries. I like to joke around with my friends where I'm like, oh, I made top 100 before you guys did. And there's always those slight little jokes and stuff, right? And it's never really, a mean thing. It's not like we're being toxic to each other. It's just, it's banter, right? So
yeah.
But there's always those small little rivalries, but at the end of the day, we're a unit, and we all work together and do everything together as a team to win.
Yeah, interesting. I think one of the things I've really seen from the outside coming in to esports is there seems to be some crazy egos at the top, like more than I've ever seen in other sports in some situations, which I was like blown away with because I've always found it interesting. Have you kind of ever experienced it in your journey so far, where kind of it's been destructive in teams, where people have just might not so much be the ego, but it's like they haven't been able to develop what you just had, which is kind of that mutual respect where you can have a bit of banter, but they've just come in way too hard, way too hot, and blown the team apart.
Yeah. Personally, at least in the U of I team, thankfully, no. We're all really close, and of course, there's people with bigger egos than other. But it's nothing like unhealthy, right? It's nothing that damages our team chemistry or anything like that. I know in the past, U of I has had some troubles with teammates. I know a few people got kicked off the teams because of exactly what you said. Just the ego thing. And I know in other schools that's a big problem too. I know a few players, I'm not going to mention their names, but a few players last week, they got kicked off the school team, and they're banned from competitive tournaments by Psyonix, the developer of the game, because of just attitude towards other schools and things like that. It's happened before. I think the few times I've dealt with that wasn't even with my school team. It was just teaming up with some people I've met online to play tournaments and things like that, and that's where you can tell that people have big egos, and that's when you're like, well, I guess they're not really in my school team, so I don't really have to team up with them anymore. In a school team though, where you kind of mixed in and kind of need to play with them regardless. I think it's just important to be honest with the person, right? You can't be afraid of confrontation because it's going to happen. I think that the biggest thing is that it's not that you're winning every single game, it's just that you're happy doing it, right? Because if you're winning every single game, but it's just draining to play with the person over and over, and the things they say and things like that, it's important you bring it up to them, right? Because to me personally, I think that winning doesn't really mean anything if you can't share it with your teammates, if you can't share the joy of winning with everybody. If you just won a game and you feel like, oh, okay, but and like how my teammates were acting, it's not worth it. So you need to be able to confront the person and say like, hey, listen, I don't like your attitude right now. You got to switch it up, okay? Because this is not good for our team.
And do you usually take that upon yourself, or do you have a team manager who kind of manages those situations?
We have a team manager. It's like we don't call it team manager. It's more like a captain, right? Have the captain of the team, and mostly if anything goes wrong, you have the responsibilities on the captain. Thankfully, we've never really had anything like that where we're headbutting and things like that. Of course, there's small little conflicts where we get mad with each other, but that's just really friendships, right? We always get mad with each other once in a while. It's just important. It's not the biggest deal if you get mad with someone. It's just the biggest deal is how quick you manage to make up and and get past those small little frictions. And it happened. It has happened in the past before, and most of we never really needed our team captain to step in. We just resolved it between ourselves. But it was never something like really big and serious. So in that regard, I'm not really sure what to do because I've never been through it. But I think that my biggest tip would just be honest. Okay, just be honest with yourself and be honest with your teammates.
Yeah, it's interesting. What you just said was pretty much every single workplace in the world, though, which is interesting because, I mean, people talk about what are transferable skills from esports to the real world. At the moment, that seems to be a conversation I have with parents because with you play a sport, it's really obvious to see. But what you just described then was, a skill that is so fundamental to being successful in any workplace. How do you have the tough conversation without letting something completely blow up and destroy an organization? So it's really interesting.
So
Yeah.
I have one question around that. You mentioned actually that Psyonix, developer of the game, kicked out 2 players. I wanted to ask you around the fact that I think Psyonix is really involved into the collegiate scene for Rocket League, because from what I've seen on the other esport that I watched on Twitch, like I don't see that much of gamer against like around universities. I see more independent association or clubs trying to turn up tournaments. Whereas for Rocket League, when I watched you playing for the tournament last weekend, um, then you were kind of playing on the RLCS Twitch channel, and it's an official tournament and it's an official league as well that you're playing in. Do you think that the involvement of Psyonix has helped Rocket League getting better in the esport collegiate scene?
Oh, by far, by far. Psionic, we have the biggest collegiate tournament. It's called CRL, and it started off as an independent organization, and they had really small prize pools, and Psionic's kind of just enveloped them, and that completely exploded it. So nowadays, you have so many colleges competing, and the prize pool I think is 100,000 or something like that. So it's big now. Psionics, I think a lot of people like to flame him, right? Because, oh, you guys did this and we wanted that and stuff. But I think overall, if you look at, you know, general developers of a game, they're really up there and they are really close to the community, and especially with esports. So with the collegiate scene, haven't really looked at so many other games and stuff and their esports scene, especially in the collegiate level. So I can't really speak for that, but I know that for Rocket League, at least, Psyonix is very, very close, very closely involved with everything, right? Not only prize pools, but for example, the streams, the RLCS streams, and the CRL streams and everything like that. Psyonix is always really close to the esports. And I mean, I'm really thankful for that, right? Because it's way more rewarding as a collegiate player to know that the developers working so closely with everything. So it's very it's very great, gratifying in a way, right? To know that your efforts are really being recognized by the developer.
Yeah, it's amazing. Just wanted to ask, so you've achieved, so far you've done some pretty awesome things, and we haven't even talked about the fact that you're studying aerospace engineering. I mean, that alone, when you finish that degree, that's an awesome achievement. But sticking to the esports theme, you've made top 100. You're doing really well within your collegiate Illinois team. What's next for you? Is it to finish the degree and then see how far you can get, or is there another step that is right in front of you that you want to achieve with Rocket League?
I think that for me, my mentality going into this is that me becoming an aerospace engineer is going to help me out for the rest of my life, right? Because if I get an aerospace engineering degree, independent of what happens in my life, I still have the degree and it's always going to be there. With Rocket League, it's uncertain. It really is, right? It's right now it's very popular, but who says tomorrow it'll still be that way, I know there's a lot of other esports scenes where they kind of, die down, and that happens with games, right? Because there's so many games around. It's not like, for example, basketball or football or, baseball or anything like that, where they've been there for such a long time. And it's not like you have so many different sports that are that big, right? You have, a few that you'll see on TV and things like that are really, really big. And they're not going anyway, right? You can't just say that, oh, basketball is going to be gone tomorrow. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But for example, Rocket League is a really big esports right now, and like CSGO and Fortnite and everything like that. So in the coming years, it's probably not going to go anywhere. But who says in the future, 20 years from now, really nobody can predict that. So I think for me, it's important that I have this opportunity now where I'm working really hard and I'm playing a lot and I love the game. And I think that's important right now for me to make use of that time and try to reach the highest level. That's really all I want. I want to be at the top. And before, whatever happens to Rocket League happens. So that's my whole mentality going to this. Of course, I'm going to pay attention to my degree, but I really want to play the game while it's here, right? Because the last thing I want is, 50 years down the line, I'm working as an aerospace engineer, think, what would have happened if, I play the game more, and, what if I actually was the best in the world or something like that?
Yeah.
So I think that's my biggest mentality. It's really, really important.
And when you say top and best in the world, I hear someone who wants to be a professional, right? That's to be part of professional top player, right? That's the dream.
Yeah, that's the dream.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's exactly gonna be what happens in my life, but yes, that would be the
no. You've got to have a dream, otherwise, there's no concept of why you're doing it. But my next question to that is it clear in your minds how that's achieved? And I ask that because one of our goals and dreams with our organization is to work out what is that pathway. How do you achieve it? Is it clear in your head what you need to do? It might not be perfect, nothing certain like we talked about, but in terms of the stepping stones of where you need to go to reach, top 10, top 5.
Mm-hmm. I think that it's honestly like anything at last. The path is very simple when you say it, but it's way harder. It's easy on paper, but way harder, once you actually do it. I think that it's really just a matter of dedication, right? Because put your mind to it and you can do it. It might take a really long time, or it might not even take that long, but it's all about, you dedicating yourself to that and actually really trying to achieve your dreams. So I think that for me, really, I just got to play more. I think that I need to make more connections also, because you might be the really good player, but if you don't have those connections, if you don't have, teammates to play with, for example, it's, it really doesn't matter if you're the best. So I think it's important to get those connections going and, be active in the community and just keep playing, really, keep playing and keep trying to improve every single day.
Yeah, I think that the word connections is coming up a lot with the people that we talk to from a higher level as well, which is quite interesting. That it does still require a fair bit of networking. That you need to have those relationships in place to further yourself, which is no different to any other industry. I just think it's interesting. From a tennis background, the ball is either in or it's out, and the connections, other than people liking you off the court, don't really exist because you can just play and win or lose. And if you keep winning, no one can stop you in a sense, which I think is really interesting. Which kind of leads me to the question of, if you could change anything about this pathway, what would it be? You see in other sports, and I'm not sure if it's the same at collegiate level, but I know with gridiron, the pathway, if you were to lay it out, would be start gridiron, play with your local club or your junior league, get as good as you can, go to high school. If you can, go to a really good football high school and then do well and get recognized, be brought into via scholarship into university or college, and then potentially get drafted. That's the process. And that obviously that I don't believe that exists for esports yet. Is that something you could see working?
Oh, I can definitely see it working. I think that as time goes on, that's also going to be the mainstream. For example, with the CRL tournaments, I have the streams, right? And the streams have a lot of people watching. And, with a lot of people watching that, there's automatically people that are looking for better players. So, for example, you playing in a college and performing well on a stream like that might bring you some attention. And organizations might start looking, professional orgs might start looking at you and be like, oh, this guy's kind of good, So I think that, it's still not the same in as in, other physical sports. But because, for example, in Rocket League, you have the leaderboards, right? So I made top 100. Now I'm on the leaderboard. And, it's really independent of UVI or not. I still made it there, regardless of what happened with my collegiate games. So that's different, with other physical sports, like, like football, you go to school and that's where you're going to play most of your games, and that's where most people are going to spot you and, be like, oh, hey, this guy's kind of good. We might, draft him or whatever. So that's the biggest difference. But I still think that it's very important that if you go to college and you really want to become a professional esports player, that you actually play in your college team, because it does get traction, and you also have this whole school supporting you, whether financially or with promotions and advertising, things like that, right? They can put you out there. They have those instruments to put you out there. They might write an article about you or whatever. I think that yes, you focus on playing the game well, and performing to your best, but you also have to promote your own brand, right? You have to promote what you're doing and promote yourself as a person, so you stick out, right? Because even if you play really well, I guarantee there's probably going to be 20 other people that play just as well as you. So you have to do something to differentiate yourself from them. It's kind of like a job interview, really, right? There's always going to be people with really good, same statistics as you. You just have to be the highlight between them.
Yeah, I just have one question around actually that Bren. Let's start first with the ranking. You mentioned that you're playing with your university team, but at the same time you're maintaining a ranking to be in the top 100. Is that two different process, or is it combined, or is it very different?
I think that mostly it's different, but there are some similarities. So once I made top 100, it's basically saying that I played the 3v3 mode, and I had my MMR points, which is my points give me a rank and everything. And out of every single player playing 3v3, I was in the top 100 of that. And I think I barely played a game with my my team on that. It was mostly me just queuing a match. We call it a solo queue, where it's just me searching up a match and I get placed with other randoms and things like that. And I barely played a game with my team in that way. Mostly when we actually play games with each other, it's mostly scrims. We set up scrims with other schools, and then we get put into a private match and then play each other. That's mostly how we train. But once I made top 100, it's pretty much just me solo queuing, which they didn't really have an impact on that. But I think that it also translates the other way. For example, the scrims that I play with my team automatically affect how I play in my solo queues 3v3s. And when I play 3v3s, especially in the higher level, it also affects how I play with my team against other high level people. So there's a lot of there's not really a lot of connections between them, but what I do on one side affects the other and vice versa.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that you have just to be clear, so you have your team where you play your scrim, but that doesn't really count in the ranking system. But
No.
then you're playing solo queue, so you have kind of two grind, right? Like you have the grind for your tournament and then the grind for your solo ranking together. So you have to maintain those two if you want to keep being in the community.
Oh, absolutely. So when I scrim with my team, we're playing a private match, and it doesn't really, since you're playing a private match, it doesn't really count towards your ranked points. So if you lose a match or win a match in a scrim, it's not going to boost your rank points any higher, because you're not playing the ranked mode, right? You're just playing a private match against another team. But that being said, though, it still matters a lot, right? Because you're playing with your team, okay? And you're playing with your team, and if you win a scrim, that's going to give you a lot of confidence. If you lose the scrim, it might, throw you back to the drawing board and think, okay, what can we do to improve? So it's two separate things, and you have to focus on both, right? Because, for example, me playing 3v3 is, for me at least, a personal thing, and it's kind of promoting my brand once I get to the top 100. Whereas me playing at the team is more of a collective thing, right? I'm playing with my teammates and we're representing the school. So it's two different things, and you play both of them right the same. You still want to win both of them, by playing the best. But it's two different things, and they lead to different rewards in a sense. It leads to different kind of experiences, and, something along those lines. But at the end of the day, what you do in one will affect the other. Okay. So it's really just separate things that have almost no connection between them, but what you do in one will always almost affect the other, you know. So yeah, I mean it's
Yeah, that's really
basically
interesting
that.
because like it's like a soccer team, right? You would, as you said, like you just play with your team and then you have your match on the weekend with your team.
Hmm.
In this scenario, you're like playing with your team and at the same time trying to develop your own brand on the side, like with a second grind. It's kind of
Hmm.
like if you were a soccer player, you were like playing your match on the weekend and then all the week you play with random people in the street so they know you and they get to know that you're the best player. So it's very
Yeah, that's
interesting.
that's basically it. It's basically like you go on a random match on a Wednesday night or whatever and play with random people you don't know. Except it counts for rank points, so there's somebody always keeping track if you're winning matches
Yeah.
or not. It's basically
Yeah.
that.
I guess one of my last main questions I want to ask you is, if you could talk to the Rocket League gods up there somewhere, what would you ask them to adjust or change about this process to get into the top? Is there anything that you see could be, I guess, improved from a player's perspective to understand how do you get from junior player to reaching the professional dream?
Um, that's a difficult question. I think that looking previously at my journey, towards being top 100, I think that my biggest challenge, at least, was not being completely open-minded. Because now, recently, I think that even if a person is way lower level than me, what they say, what they say about you playing, still matters because that's the way they're seeing it. And even if, of course, they're not, as high of a level as you, they might see something that you're not because once you're playing the game, it's very, very hard to, analyze how you're playing in the middle of it, right? Because you're gonna lose focus, and that's gonna help. It's gonna um, start to make you overthink how you're playing things. So like, oh well, I made this mistake here. What should I change? If you start thinking that during a match, it might lead you to overthinking things and be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this, and then that's completely wrong, right? You should be doing that thing, but because you're thinking about it too much, you kind of end up overthinking that doesn't that kind of makes you play worse basically. um Whereas somebody else that is watching matches, they're not playing, so their mindset is different. That's why a lot of the times people will see like games of their own rank playing and they'll look at them and be like, wow, these people are so slow, like they're so bad. I'm so much better than this. And once you actually play, you're like, what happened? I thought it was better, right? So it's I think that, Sam, answering your question is, if I had to say some of the Rocket League gods, I just say like, hey, just be more open-minded towards what people say and towards their feedback and things. Because even if you don't agree with it, just try to look the reason why they're saying that, right?
Yeah.
What is their mentality behind that statement? Why did they say that, and why did they think that? And just look at your own gameplay to answer those questions.
Yeah, awesome. One of the final questions, sorry, I jumped the gun early on my final question, is for anyone who wants to follow in your footsteps, what are three things that you would tell them? The three most important things. People that want to go to college, go down that pathway, and potentially one day be top 100, possibly a professional player. What are your three things that you'd want them to know?
Three things. Okay, I think that the biggest one is having your priorities right, because esports might not be for everybody. A lot of people just want to play for fun, and once you throw in the esports competitive aspect, it doesn't like not become fun, but sometimes it feels like a job because there's expectations of you. Whereas you playing for fun, nobody's expecting really anything of you, right? You're just playing for fun, just enjoying yourself. Once you join a college team, there's expectations. So people are expecting you to perform your best. And, even if you don't, I think the biggest really expectation of them is just for you to keep practicing, right? If you are playing for a collegiate team, you kind of have the responsibility to, even if you don't play your best, you need the responsibility of playing and dedicating yourself to be the best you can. So I think that the first one is having priorities right. Decide if esports is going to be a big competitive thing for you, or are you just playing the game for fun. The second one I'd say is sometimes just take a step back and breathe, because if you're just constantly playing, you're going to miss out on a lot of crucial things. You're going to miss out in things that you might need to do to improve yourself. You might miss out on, your mental health is not the best, or your physical health is not the best. Because once you're playing, you kind of have that tunnel vision, right? You just focus on the game and not the things around you. So it's important to just be healthy inside the game and outside the game, and have both of those sides of your life doing well, because they go hand to hand with each other. Sometimes you'll get mad at the game, and then you'll get mad at somebody in your life, or vice versa. You'll be mad at somebody in your life and get mad at your teammates or something like that. So it's, I say first is having your priorities straight. Second is keeping a healthy, overall lifestyle, and, sometimes just taking a step back and take a deep breath. And I say the third one, just don't forget to have fun, because at the end of the day, I think the coolest thing about esports to me is that you make a living off of video games, and that's like the coolest thing ever to me, right? You're just playing a video game and competing at the highest of levels. And it's something that a lot of people would dream, and a lot of people even make fun of. They're like, oh, wow, I work 8 hours a day, getting this much money. And you just see these kids playing video games for a living. Like, wow, what has this world come to, right? And I think a lot of that is just jealousy. People are like, oh my gosh, they get to play video games for a living while I'm just, working an actual, 9 to 5 job. So it's important to have fun. If you're going to be an esports player, I think the biggest reward really is that, you're not really working a single day of your life, because I think you're just really having fun. I wouldn't consider it a job, because it's more like a glorified hobby, if I do say so myself, right? It's you're doing something that I really love, and it'd be like a hobby in your pastime, but you're getting rewarded for it, like financially and things like that.
Which is every sport, right? End of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Every sport is like that. Yeah, it's important that you really like what you're doing, right? And even if esports is not for you, for example, if I ever decide, I'll just quit Rocket League and focus on becoming an engineer, it's important that me being an engineer is fun, and it's refreshing, and it's not something that's going to take a toll on me, because I think that the worst thing you can do in this life, it's a limited life, and you have a limited time here. I think the worst thing to do is you're just slaving yourself to, work that you don't enjoy. So I think that have your priorities straight, and sometimes just take a deep breath, and the most important is just have fun, right? Enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, amazing. All right, Lewis, where can people, when's the next event, and where can people watch you? How do we follow you and support you?
Okay, next event, I'm not quite sure. Now everything is kind of, calming down, since we're going to have winter break coming up. So we might have a few minor tournaments here or there. But you guys can hear about that. I have my Twitter and my Twitch, where I might start streaming now that I'm going to have more time, since I'm having my break. So you can follow on me on Twitter. It's just SLKRL_, and the Twitch is the same thing. So yeah, give me a follow. Come watch me play, and I'll be glad to have anybody there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, mate. I think a lot of people will get a lot out of this in terms of, especially the younger generation that are looking at these scholarships coming up, and this new thriving industry that's starting to enter college systems. I think it'd be really awesome to hear what you have to say and what you've experienced so far. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. It was great.